Good morning and welcome to the Rapid City Planning Commission meeting for July 21st, 2022. If any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the Planning Commission agenda today, there are speaker request forms on the table along the left wall. Please fill out the request with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the staff seated on the left of the dais. This time we would also like to ask that if any member of the audience has a cell phone or other electronic device, that you either turn it off or turn the ringer to silent. If you need to take a call, please step out to the hallway so the meeting is not disrupted. Items 1 and 2 have been placed on the consent calendar today and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of the planning commission are recommendations to the city council. The city council will make the final decision. Are there any items 1 or 2 that staff would like removed? Any items 1 or 2 that planning commission would like removed? And are there any items 1 or 2 that any audience member would like removed for separate consideration? The chair would then entertain a motion to approve items 1 and 2 in accordance with the staff's recommendation. All right, Vince made the motion to approve those items, and Eric Heikus seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3.
Good morning. Item number 3 is a preliminary subdivision plan to split a lot located in Moon Meadows Estates subdivision. I'd like to note that generally a preliminary subdivision plan like this would not be placed on the non-consent calendar. However, there was some neighborhood opposition to this item, so we wanted to ensure that the neighbors had the opportunity to provide public comment. They had concerns with the item not complying with the subdivision's covenants. However, I'd like to remind everyone that the city does not have authority to enforce private covenants. Those must be dealt with on a private matter. The subject property is 4.7 acres in size and located just south of Moon Meadows Drive. It's located within the county or the city's 3-mile platting jurisdiction. It's currently developed with 1 single-family residence and 1 accessory structure. The property is zoned suburban residential. The proposed lot sizes are in line with the county's requirements for that zoning designation. And the future land use plan identifies the property, the appropriate future use of the property as forest conservation. The property is located along Moon Meadows Drive, which is identified as a principal arterial on the city's major street plan. So proposed lot 1 would be, or proposed lot 13B is 3.57 acres in size. That is the property that the existing residence is located on. And proposed lot 13A is currently void of structural development. And that proposed lot is, I believe, 1.17 acres in size. Proposed lot 13B would be accessed via a non-exclusive private access easement to be created per this plat. Both lots would be served by private sewer and water. Both would be on septic systems and a private well. This is a view of the property looking to the north or to the south. View of the property looking north across Moon Meadows Drive. View of the property looking west along Moon Meadows Drive, and a view of the property looking east. Overall, the proposed plat is in compliance with all applicable zoning requirements and the city's comprehensive plan, and as such, the city or staff is recommending approval of the item. I'll stand by for any questions, and I do believe that the property owners are present.
Thank you. Any questions for staff on this one? I'll jump in. In the 3-mile platting radius, we we're looking at land use, correct? Not necessarily utilities or the development. That would be under the county's
Just the opposite.
opposite.
The
Okay.
county looks at what is the appropriate land use. What is the underlying zoning? Does it meet their zoning designation, minimum lot size and lot configuration? We look at it to ensure that it addresses the infrastructure needs for development. And again, our authority for reviewing plats is limited to a 3-mile radius of the city, with the assumption that in time that property would be brought into the city. And we want to make sure that it's not going to be a cost to the taxpayers if we allow substandard development. In this case, as is similarly in these more rural areas in the 3-mile platting jurisdiction, we do see development or additional density through the platting process with on-site water and wastewater. There are no municipal services in this area. So because of the large residential lot sizes, this is typical of what you would allow outside of the city limits. If they were to come in and try to do 6,500 square foot lots, they would have to provide some kind of community water and sewer facility in order to create that density.
As a follow-up, I guess, then what I was more going towards was the on-site wastewater. Who permits that? Does the city then permit it, or is it the county? Maybe that's Todd?
Yeah, the city, we regulate permitting on-sites within 1 mile of the city. It's an agreement that we have with the county.
Okay. And that would be probably this would be within 1 mile.
Yes. Yes.
They are just barely within a mile, it looks like.
Okay. Eric Hikas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That actually kind of precludes my question, which is 1.1 acres is fairly tight for easement, house, and septic and sanitary. Is there perk tests or other supportive documentation that supports the sanitary?
So there are sufficient number of on-site facilities in the area to support that the soils will allow for conventional systems. The county used to require a note on a plat that indicated that upon building permit, they would need to bring that in, but it was determined that really isn't a platting comment that should be on the plat. And we've got one surveyor in the audience today that can attest that that was a burdensome note to put on it and really doesn't go to creating a legal description for the purposes of transfer. In this case, once that lot is sold and that new owner should decide the location of the home, they'll have to do the perk tests to determine that the soils will support a drain field.
That answers my question. Thank you.
All right, any other questions from the Planning Commission on this one? Comments? Motion?
I'll make a motion.
Karen made the motion to approve item number 3 with the staff stipulations as listed. And Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4.
Good morning, Kip Harrington, Long Range Planning. Item number 4 is 22 PD 036, which is a major amendment to a plan development to allow on-sale liquor in conjunction with a retail store. The retail store is located at the corner of West Omaha Street and Founders Park Drive and is known as Black Hills Running Company. The store is approximately 1,278 square feet in size and occupies the southern portion of the building. A 4,336 square foot physical therapy office occupies the northern portion. So Black Hills Running is a running store. They offer shoes and apparel and custom screen printing, and they plan on having some different events there as they're located close to the bike path, and a lot of people will run and walk there. So they want to hold some community fun runs and some events for the Runners Club, and in conjunction with those, they would like to have on-sale alcohol. Again, this would be sold only during these special events, would not be available on a full-time basis, and will be stored in a locked area in the basement when it is not being used as one of the events. I'll take you through some slides as you can see, it's located at the corner of Founders Park and Omaha Street. It is zoned general commercial district. Future land use is mixed-use commercial, and is located on the corner of West Omaha Street, and also South Dakota Highway 44, which is classified as a principal arterial street on the major street plan, and Founders Park Drive, which is classified as a collector street on the city's major street plan. Here's a site plan of the property. You may remember this one from a previous plan development where they constructed this additional parking lot located to the east of the property. And again, an interior layout showing the main floor and the basement. And again, the alcohol will be stored down here in the basement in a locked facility when there are no events going on at the store. Some site photos. This is the storefront facing to the parking lot. This is looking west along Omaha Street. This is looking at the store from Omaha Street. You can see that the conditional use permit sign was posted, and also the plan development sign has been posted in the window. Come on. Another photo of the storefront facade, and then this is looking east along Omaha Street and looking across the street towards the commercial strip mall across Omaha Street. Again, it's a limited operation of alcohol sales only in conjunction with special events, which will be held multiple, maybe 2 or 3 times a week at the most. And that's all I have for you today, and I am available for any questions. And staff recommends that this be approved with the stipulations as outlined in the staff report.
Thanks, Kip. Questions for Kip on this one? Eric Odenbacher?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is the applicant here?
Come on over and introduce yourself.
You're going to address,
Okay.
can you be at the microphone and just let us know your name?
From an objective standpoint, I really don't have too much of an issue with this. We give out these kind of licensures or permits frequently. But as a physician assistant, I have to ask, what is the real purpose behind this with the alcohol? I mean, it seems to be the antithesis of what you're trying to promote in terms of running. The other aspect of it is that alcohol retards your recovery after activity. So to promote these fun runs and healthy events and then to give alcohol seems like it's contradicts each other.
My name's Andrew Rexroad. I'm the sales and marketing coordinator for Black Hills Running Company and Physio Performance, that adjoined PT facility. And so the alcohol sales, and it's going to be limited to just after post runs, so you're exactly right. The running community has almost gotten used to that type of reward after a workout or a run. Most major events, obstacle course races, big runs, beer runs, things like that, they obviously they don't promote alcohol drinking, but it's usually available. And this would just be like a single serve. Usually, like on our Thursday nights, the plan is to do that in conjunction with a barbecue and things like that, so it's more of a social gathering.
If I can dovetail on that. You are going to have one underage employee, but that employee will have no contact.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
with
Right
this,
now,
won't be checking IDs or anything like that.
I didn't mean to interrupt. She presently doesn't even work on these evenings where the alcohol would be out. Yeah, so there would be no issue with her being around it, having access to it, or serving it or touching it in any way.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
Okay, Vicki?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a two-step project in order to be able to actually serve alcohol. One, the Planning Commission looks at the location and the operation. Two, they then have to secure a license from the City Council, and in that there is a background check on those that will be operating the facility to make sure that they are responsible, and if at any time during the course of holding this license, it becomes obvious to the city that there is an underage person touching, handling, or serving alcohol or drinking alcohol, then that license will not be renewed in the future. So, great question, Eric, but we also have some backup from council on the licensing side of it.
All right, other questions for the applicant or staff or on this one? Comments? All right, Eric Heikus made the motion to approve item number 4 with the stipulations. And Vince seconded that motion.
Thank you.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5.
Item number 5 is 22 UR 016, which is a conditional use permit to allow on-sale liquor in conjunction with a restaurant. I will walk you through some slides on this one. The restaurant is located downtown on St. Joseph near the corner of 5th and St. Joseph Street. It's zoned Central Business District. Future land use of the property is downtown, and the major street plan shows it is located along St. Joseph Street, which is a principal arterial on the city's major street plan, and also near 5th Street, which is also a principal arterial. The restaurant is known as El Nevado. It is a Mexican food restaurant located downtown, and it was formerly Curry Masala Restaurant before that. And before that, if you're really old, it was Jerry's House of Pizza or Smiley's House of Pizza. It's been many different restaurants over time. And most of those restaurants had on sale. As a matter of fact, Curry Masala had an on sale license when they opened in 2010. However, they let their license lapse. And since the license has lapsed for greater than 2 years, then therefore it is back as another new conditional use permit to allow on sale at this location. So here's the floor plan of the restaurant and some site photos. This is the restaurant in the front looking east along St. Joseph Street. This is along the sidewalk looking west along St. Joseph Street. You can see they've revamped the sign quite a bit in some nice colors of Mexico. This is looking across the street, across St. Joseph Street, towards the parking lot, which will soon become the Block 5 development. And as you can see, they're starting to store some construction materials. There's also a crane located over there. I just drove by it the other day, and the crane's up now. So progress happening on that front as well. And this is a photo from across the street looking at the property itself. You can see the conditional use permit posted in the sign along the front of the building. And there's another close-up of the sign. This is to serve alcohol in conjunction with the Mexican restaurant. Again, it'll be served during normal business hours, operating approximately 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday. There are some apartments located above the restaurant, as typical in our downtown environment, with retail on the ground floor and some living space above. And wine and beer sales only, no hard liquor located or allowed at this location. And so it's pretty typical of a downtown restaurant to be able to serve wine and or beer along with a meal. I don't believe the applicant is here, unless he's invisible, so I'm available for any questions, and staff does recommend to approve the conditional use permit with the stipulations as outlined in the staff report.
Thanks, Kip. Any comments, questions? I guess I just had one on the, oh, Vince, go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I recently visited this restaurant, and unfortunately, I would have loved to have asked the applicant a couple of questions, but one of the problems that I call it a problem was when I was there was several people that got up and left because of the lack of staffing. So, I mean, has there been any issue with them keeping up with their staff that you know of?
I can't answer that question. That would be for the applicant. I'm not aware of that.
Yeah.
Mr.
But
Chair?
I imagine as if they are like any other restaurant in town, they're probably short-staffed.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
There are many times you're going to walk into places of business, especially places that serve food and drink, that say, we're trying to serve you, we just don't have the staff to serve you, and many of them are actually posting signs. even professional offices are struggling. There's so many jobs available and so few people looking to fill those positions in comparison. And so it's become a huge issue for everyone, how to attract and how to retain good employees. So hopefully, this will make this facility more competitive and they'll get more staff in.
Well, I agree. Thank you.
My question was just on the first stipulation about fire sprinkler. It says upon issuance of a building permit. What, is there a, like, is this a remodel or is this just a, I mean, I guess I wondered what the building permit was for.
Could we defer to Chip? Chip, I am not sure. Is this building sprinklered now, or is it one that they're working with the fire department to get sprinklered?
Chip?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
It is not sprinklered yet, and with the square footage that it is currently, and actually talking with the building official, we're looking at, they're going to have to pull a building permit probably for a second exit. So, and we made them stipulations, but I wanted to make sure the board that not to hold it up because of the sprinkler system's not installed yet, let them get their liquor license, operate, and then we'll work with them to get it done. But I just wanted to make sure that I didn't want to hold the liquor license up as we're working through the process.
Okay.
And we have looked at that area, and there's a building next door that has a large water line, and this one might also, so it'll make it easier on the pocketbook. And we have a concern with this use, with 6 apartments upstairs and stuff, the more we get protected, the safer for everybody.
Yeah, these issues are tough because I would guess that this is a tenant versus the owner of the building, and they're, it's that whole, you tie the liquor use to the building, but is it worth, is the owner willing to step to the plate as well to keep the tenant, or vice versa?
And Mr. Chair, if I might, so the fire department has been great. There are many older structures in town that are being used right now. And when they come to your attention or our attention through a building permit or an item that requires a public hearing, you don't ever see the fire department say, shut down the building. They need to be, based on today's code, that needs to be sprinklered. They allow them to continue, and they work with the owner to coordinate a timeline of when that sprinkler system is going to be installed. In this case, I would assume that the building official has indicated that that second access is of emergency purposes. That's a little less costly to put in, but they'll continue operating before they can get their on-sale liquor in operation. We want that second access in place. They'll continue to work with the fire department over a longer timeline to then have the fire sprinkler installed.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
And that's why I put that comment in there about the building permit process, just so the owner and, the tenant are aware that no matter what happens to that building, as soon as a building permit is required to be pulled, then, the sprinkler system would have to be added too. So just kind of give them a heads up too, and we'll work with both of them to make things work.
All right. Eric Ottenbacher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To kind of dovetail on that, do they have a specific timeline involved with, and what if they don't meet that timeline?
Well, we work, we don't have a specific timeline, especially nowadays with availability of contractors and to get the process done. So we didn't put a hard, fast number. A lot of times they do 18 months. But with this day and age, we didn't put a hard line on there just for the fact of getting a contractor in there to do the work, and the process takes a lot longer nowadays, as we all know. Did that answer your question?
Yes. If I could ask one more question, please.
Yeah, go for it.
It's right next to Rimrock Church. We haven't had any pushback from there. I know we're kind of conscious about, how far away we are from churches, parks, et cetera, but we haven't had any pushback from them. And am I also understanding that this restaurant is not going to be open on Sundays?
Mr. Chair?
Kip?
That's correct. We have not received any word from Rimrock Church in any opposition to this, and their operations plan states that their operating hours are 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday. So yes, they are closed on Sunday. So there should be no conflict between Rimrock Church operating on Sunday and the restaurant itself.
Perfect. Thank you.
Vince?
Just to clarify, there was something mentioned about a second exit. There's no second exit in this building, in this restaurant?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
there is a second exit, but per code, that exit's in the kitchen area is what if I remember looking at that. And that, for a public emergency exit, it can't go through a kitchen like that. So they're going to have to review that and look at that, so.
Okay. Thank you. And I just want to clarify that when I was in the restaurant, I did get excellent service from the waiter, so.
But how was the food?
The food was delicious, so.
I'm only doing this because we don't have a whole ton of stuff behind this item. So this is one of those buildings that's built to the extent of the property lines. Their property line, every wall on this one. Where do you add a second exit if not to the alley and sidewalk? Do you have to go get an agreement with the parking lot next door that the Journal owns, or do you get an agreement with behind the church building with Larry? I mean, that's going to be an interesting second exit. Chip?
Mr. Chair?
Staff? Vicki?
It wouldn't be unique that someone did have to have that emergency exit where it is going out onto a parking lot. Remember, this is emergency. So what we're trying to ensure is that in case there is a reason that people need to leave the building immediately and they can't get to the established front door, that they're going to leave the building in another fashion. Whether they get an easement or not would be secondary to at least getting them out of the building.
Yeah, I guess I'm just asking it from the standpoint that there, there's no setbacks there, so there could be a building that's built
You
on
sound
that
like a
park.
builder.
Vince, I'll get off my...
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I was, again, having sat in this restaurant waiting, I was speculating, how would I get out if I had to? And maybe it's just the military training in me. I always think of how do I get out of something, and I'd have no problem walking through that kitchen to get out.
Fair enough. Mike Kwasny.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, in listening to all this conversation, there's got to be restaurants that would not have the ability to go out a second exit onto a parking lot with everything built side by side. So I guess there's going to be buildings downtown that are not going to have that except through a kitchen. And so it's kind of a unique situation, but I don't know if to me, I guess it's an undue hardship almost, and I'm not trying to be, I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit, because there'll be a lot of others that are not going to be able to do that.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
So this is an established restaurant. They are adding alcohol to it. It allows us to go back and look at additional security. There are other buildings in the downtown area especially that are side by side by side by side. And as the chair mentioned, they either have access to the sidewalk or to the alley. In many instances, that alley access is sufficient. As the fire department indicated, having that second access where you walk through a kitchen isn't desirable. If need be, there's provisions where they can seek exceptions to allow that second access through an area that wouldn't otherwise be permitted. But if there is the allowability of creating an access that truly meets building code and fire code, we're going to try to find it and ensure that it's in place in this instance. We want to ensure that every building that's in our beautiful downtown area continues to have use and future uses. But whenever we can, we try to implement current day building code and fire code without being a hindrance or hampering a property owner or a business operator to the extent where they can't open their door. So it is kind of give and take as we go, but I think that we've been very successful on trying to work with individual operators and property owners. I've seen the fire department at times look at a phase plan that maybe extend out over 5 years to ensure that at the end of the day, we get what we need, but it's business as usual up until that point. So it's been working for a lot of years. Your comments are great. We have to get pretty creative sometimes.
Eric Hikas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I would agree with the planning director on this one. It's sometimes life safety needs to trump some of the other minor elements. A surviving trespasser is a surviving trespasser at that point, right? Who's kept their life, and then the property owner can decide if they want to file charges at that point. So, so thank you.
All right, Vince made the motion to approve item number 5 with the stipulations. Okay. And Eric Ottenmarker seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6.
Mr. Chair, I would like to present items 6 and 7 at the same time, and then have you take action separately.
Okay.
So item 6 is final plan development to allow a community park. Item 7 is a major amendment to an apartment development that is just north of the lot shown in yellow. This is out at Johnson Ranch. And you may recall that in 21, when the Planning Commission approved that plan development for the apartments, there's a stipulation that says that the community park that was approved for Johnson Ranch must have a plan development submitted to show the intent of that park before a certificate of occupancy can be issued for the apartment development. So at a previous meeting this year, you saw a final plan development for the park. And at that meeting, it identified that they were just going to create a green space with limited landscaping. There was some opposition from Planning Commission and members of the neighborhood that that wasn't sufficient. That's not what they were promised. And so you continued the item and shared with the applicant at the time, come back with a good plan. In the meantime, a couple of our city council members, in visiting with the developer of this project, negotiated and facilitated an agreement whereby the park would be expanded to include this lot. If, in consideration of that being gifted to the city would agree to accept ownership of the entire park property, and that the city would then construct the park. That item was before the council in July of this year, and they directed staff to facilitate the agreement with the developer, the owner, for the city to own this. On July 21st, a quitclaim deed signed by the owner of both of these parcels was submitted to the city. Kinsley will be bringing an item forward to the city council for them to accept that quitclaim deed. Now, having said that, it is no longer the developer's responsibility to build the park. Council has made the determination the city will own it and the city will build it. So the applicant has withdrawn the final plan development that you had previously continued, since they are no longer responsible for the park. Item 6, we're just asking that you acknowledge the withdrawal. The application's already withdrawn, but you do need to take action to acknowledge the withdrawal. So potentially, if I could have you act on that first. To acknowledge the withdrawal of the applicant's request. Thank you.
All right, is there a second to Vince's motion? Okay, I heard Mike. Mike Quasny seconded that. Any discussion on the motion to acknowledge the withdrawal? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7 then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the major amendment to the plan development for the apartment development was submitted to remove the stipulation that a certificate of occupancy cannot be issued for the apartments until the final plan development is submitted for review and approval for the park. Since the applicant is no longer responsible for the construction of the park, and since it is now on the city to design and bring forward funding for the creation of the park, we did not believe that it was fair and just treatment for the applicant of the apartment development, who, by the way, that owner is not the owner of the parkland. Joe Muth is the developer that's doing the apartments. They're just about ready for a certificate of occupancy. In visiting with our Parks and Rec Director, Jeff Bigler, he acknowledges that he will need to continue to work with the council on identifying a funding source for the construction of the park. We're hopeful that initially we can get the site graded, maybe irrigated and seeded, so that the neighborhood can at least use it as some green space, and then in the near future identify the funding that would bring forward some playground equipment and potentially a couple parking spaces. It is in its entirety only 1.31 acres, so it's in virtue of park size extremely small, but they will do, with the experts they have on staff, a great job laying something in that will bring some good use for the neighborhood. So with that, we are requesting that the major amendment to the plan development for the apartments be approved, eliminating the stipulation that a certificate of occupancy cannot be issued until the final PD for the park is approved.
All right, thanks, Vicki. Eric Heikus?
It's not a question. It's a suggestion. Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
So, Land and Water Conservation Fund is a good option. And then playground equipment can be bid through U.S. Communities, which allows you to install 1 or 2 different types of manufacturers and not have to have an elaborate set of plans. Those are ways to cut costs and also help fund the project. So I'll make that suggestion.
Thank you.
I just had one question. This has been one of those ongoing ones, so I remember the big parts, but the details. That lot that's added, or you know, at one point it was a future multifamily lot that the developer agreed to add back to this parkland. How big is that?
0.4 acres.
0.4.
And then the park that was originally before you, that you just acknowledged the withdrawal, was 0.91 acres.
And then I missed I think it was just continued. I missed one discussion of this, and maybe 21st of June or 23rd of June. When we continued it back in April, we had a question posed. What was the park size originally back when all these agreements were made versus?
So the original, in 2017, there was a plan development that came forward for some of these residential lots on the southern end. And they had reduced lot sizes and increased lot coverage. And in consideration of that, the developer indicated that they would bring forward a public park with phase 2 of the development. And that public park at that time was in this configuration.
Okay.
However, even on that master plan for the park, this portion of it was always set aside for drainage. The city now owns that, and the city now maintains that as well. So we're getting back the usable area that was originally identified in 2017. Our concern from a staff level is that we have families that have been living out there since about 2017 that have been promised a public park. They're living on very small lots. It's now 2022. It's probably still going to take a year or two to get something that they can actually use. And so that's frustrating. But now that it's in the city's authority to bring forward those improvements, we will try to expedite that to the greatest degree possible.
Yeah, with the council previously taking action on this and coming to an agreement, I mean, what staff has suggested is totally fine by me. I wanted to make sure that, or I guess I was just hoping that we were in a similar land size, because I just didn't feel like the previous proposal without that 0.4 acre lot was even close to similar size-wise. Anyway, that's it. Any other questions or comments on item number 7, the removal of a stipulation in a plan development? With the stipulation removed?
Thank you.
Okay, Karen made the motion to approve a major amendment of a plan development to remove a stipulation, and Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That's the end of the regular agenda today. Are there any staff items or other items for us?
No, we didn't really have anything for today. You may notice that Tanner's not here today. Just as busy as we are trying to get everyone out on vacation. Kip, thank you for making his presentations. You'd have never known Kip wasn't the one that wrote those reports. But we did have comment on one of our items about lack of employees, and the city is are experiencing that too. My point being is that one of the attributes of being a planner in Rapid City, South Dakota, is that we work with you. And the respect and the trust and just the exchange that we share between staff and the Planning Commission has never been better than it is right now. And I just wanted to take a moment and thank all of you for always being so respectful. We don't have to agree, but when we disagree, to do so with respect makes the world a difference, and that really helps us retain valued employees. And so thank you. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure when we come to this meeting. I call it showtime. This team works hard. It's their opportunity to really show to you and to the public what the hard work that they've put into each one of their reviews. And you folks acknowledge that, and it's greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Well, right back at everyone over here. You all have signed up for it's not just showtime, it's prime time. This is we have so much going on in this city right now, and could use probably a few more people to help sift through it. But you all do a great job of that. Haven?
Earlier this week, one of the news outlets reported that the city had said that Block 5 development would have over 300 parking places. And that's true, but I think it's misleading. And I don't know where that came from, but the news outlet indicated it came from the city.
I'll defer to Sarah. She did the hard review on that project.
Pardon me?
I'll defer to Sarah.
Oh.
I can't speak to the direct news source that you're referencing, Haven. I'm not sure which source it was. The developer of that project is providing 330 parking stalls in the form of a private garage. So that garage will be accessible by the hotel tenants, the apartment tenants, perhaps their retail uses. I'm not sure about that. Certainly, we work with the news crews as much as we can to make sure information is as transparent as possible. That might be a comment we can pass forward to Daryl Shoemaker, the city's communications coordinator. I think that as the Block 5 project is continuing to go up downtown, there will be continued coverage on that, and we can help to make sure that that is more clear. So it's a good,
good
point made.
I will make sure I talk to Daryl. But the implication from the news on the TV just a couple of days ago was that basically that there was going to be 300 parking places for the public. And, you know, I think what you just said is my understanding too, that basically that it's a private parking for the tenants in the hotel.
I suppose they might spin it that it does provide some element of public parking, but you better be a part of the public that's using their facility.
Yeah, I just would totally agree with Haven. There are going to be a lot of community members surprised by the fact that they don't have public ownership of those parking spaces.
So when the TIF was originally brought forward, it was heavily vetted that this project did not include any public parking. Anna Gilligan, our division manager for parking enforcement, worked diligently to take the surface parking permit holders and relocate them throughout the downtown area. And to her great applause, she tried to find locations for those using that parking lot currently in an area that better suited them. So they had shorter distance to walk to work or their apartment or whatever. And many of them, it was costing them less than it currently did. So at the end of the day, it was of public record. There were news stories about that the previous developer had to provide public parking. This guy doesn't, or this group doesn't. So I think it's just enough time has passed, and one misstatement by one reporter, and it can certainly spread a wrong bit of information. But we will make sure that we do a point of clarification, even though it has been heavily vetted.
Mr. Chair, may I add one more thing?
Yes, sir.
Just big picture speaking, so I was involved with a parking study that was performed in 2016 and 2017. Downtown is a dynamic place. It's continually changing. So even in how we look at parking, that's something we need to keep on top of, not just today, but into the future. We'll be continuing to evaluate capacity, needs. We're budgeting for a parking study to occur in the future. So it's certainly a very well-made comment and something we also are watching very closely to make sure that we have a healthy and functioning parking system to the service of the entire downtown.
Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having worked in journalism for a while, sometimes a semicolon and a colon can be put in the wrong spot. So if a reporter made a mistake, and I'll apologize for him or her up front. But I remember everything just the way Vicki presented it. Is that when this came up, we had those parking spaces were reassigned, and the staff worked hard to get them to a location to where they could be satisfied. And so, yeah, I think it's easily corrected. Just simply call up the station or the reporter and say, I think you got it wrong, and I'm sure they'd write some kind of retraction. And regarding the staff's presentations, having sat through many presentations in my life, you folks do a great job. I mean, it's clear, it's concise, and no misplaced semicolons or colons in that. Thank you.
Mike Kwasny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I put my light on because I wanted to thank you for all that you do, because you guys do work hard, and we appreciate very much how you make our job easier, and it's much appreciated. As far as the parking on that building, I guess, do they have, one of the things that I think that was required is that they have adequate parking for what they're putting into that building. Isn't that part of what the parking, to make sure that they do not use parking on the city?
Mr. Chair.
Sarah?
So this property is in the central business district, which by the zoning code does not require development to provide its own on-site parking. However, say they were in a different zoning district and had to provide parking for their hotel uses, the apartment uses and the retail, we took a look at what that parking requirement would be, should it be required, and they actually were quite close to what would be required if parking were required in the central business district. So to answer your question, long way to answer your question was, yes, they're generally providing parking to meet the needs of their uses.
Right, which was better than creating a problem not having the parking and having the city require, so, okay.
Your point was well made.
Eric Heiketh?
I got to start with the joke. So 3 words. I'm going to put a comma in, and then I'm going to put an exclamation point. Ready? Let's eat, kitten. Let's eat, kitten. Big difference in those 2 sentences. So, my comment is regarding the 300 parking, if that is the number. One of the strategies that is used successfully in large urban areas is the first parking stall comes at a rate that's affordable for those units. So say you have 300 apartments, 1 parking stall for one of those apartments is sort of part of the base fee, it's reasonable. But the second comes at a premium. I mean, if you need 2 vehicles for 1 unit, then you're going to pay. You're going to pay dearly for it. So I'm not saying that that's something we need to implement or consider, but I've seen that used successfully in the past. So.
All right. Any other comments? I'm going to throw one more, and I'm going to challenge everybody. Just think about it. Don't respond today. But we've talked about these special alcohol licenses in detail the past few meetings because we've had some oddballs thrown at us. And one thing that we struggle with as a commission is we're charged with looking at the building, but it's hard not to get into the question of where do we stop? You know, what uses shouldn't have an alcohol license? And like the one today, a lot of these, a furniture store, that kind of thing, what they're looking for is not an everyday service, but they're looking to not have to do a special event license every time they want to do it. So maybe there's a middle ground that the council could entertain where they could grant a license for a monthly use or some nature of that where it would be more of a, you know, we have to treat these like this running store. Well, I shouldn't say the running one, but let's say the salon. We have to treat the salon ones like they are in the business of selling beer and wine, and that's what they're trying to do, in accessory with selling nails. Maybe there's a middle ground that would be better for both sides, both the licensure process and the land and building use process, than a one-time special use permit and a blanket permit. Just a thought.
Mr. Chair, your comment is well made, and it's something that we can think about. And I will say that the one thing that leaps to mind as you were going through that is the cost of those special event permits. You know, it's $250 to have a conditional use permit reviewed. If they had to do a special event permit, even if it was quarterly or monthly, that becomes an accrued cost that makes them less competitive with those that would then be grandfathered in. So, I mean, there's some nuances in there that I don't know all the detail to, but we can look at that. Obviously, it would take council's action to change that, but
Yeah.
I appreciate what you're doing. It is a good conversation in that as planning commissioners, you are reviewing whether or not they meet the criteria for a conditional use permit. What is the negative impact? So I kind of shared with you folks that we had some folks come in a few years ago that wanted to do on-sale liquor in conjunction with an indoor children's playground. And we convinced them not to make that application. It just seemed like a complete contradiction of uses. But if it's a nail salon or a furniture store or a lighting company or a running shop, if it's meeting those stipulations of approval, we're almost required to approve it if we are in concurrence with their operational plan. As long as they they fit within the number of licenses that can be issued by the city, picking out and having personal preference over where one should be or shouldn't be can become problematic, and it would be difficult if we were challenged in a court of law, which we have been in the past, and we've not held up to those challenges very well at all. So, you know, it might take limiting those licenses to a harsher degree so that at least we have fewer of these coming in. It's rare an agenda that you don't have an on-sale liquor request.
The other part of my comment that I think the council should consider on these is the beer and wine, just raise the yearly fee for it. You know, that would also change the complexion of what the folks are considering. And, you know, my guess is, what is it, $500 for a beer, $500 for wine?
I couldn't tell you standing here right now.
Yeah, and that might be a dated number, but the staff hours that it takes even to do renewals, you know.
Yep.
I'll get off of it. Any other items from the commission since I took it up the time? Motion to adjourn? All right, Vince made the motion. Second. Karen seconded the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.